My father sent a group text to all 4 of his children with a photo of our family yacht docked in the French Riviera. The message said, 2 weeks. Mediterranean. All of you. No excuses. Family meeting time. I stared at that message for a solid minute, knowing something was up. Dad didn't do spontaneous family vacations anymore, and he definitely didn't call mandatory meetings on a $4 million yacht unless something serious was happening. I'm Ryan, the second oldest of 4 kids. My older sister Charlotte is 38 and runs a boutique investment firm in Manhattan. My younger brother Preston is 32 and does something in cryptocurrency that none of us fully understand, but apparently makes him wealthy. And my baby sister Gemma is 28 and works as an art curator in Los Angeles. We're all successful in our own ways, but none of us built what we have from scratch. That foundation came from Dad's commercial real estate empire and Mom's family money. We grew up with vacation homes, private schools, and yes, a family yacht named Serenity that was anything but serene. The yacht was Dad's pride and joy. He bought it 15 years ago after closing a massive deal in Dubai. It's a 65-foot Sunseeker yacht with 4 staterooms, a full crew, every luxury amenable you could imagine. Dad always said the yacht represented everything he'd worked for. That was proof he'd made it beyond his working-class childhood. Mom loved it too, but for different reasons. She said the yacht was where our family felt most like a family, away from the chaos of our normal lives. I should mention that Dad is 67 and Mom is 64. Both are in excellent health, still running their businesses, still active and sharp. This wasn't a deathbed situation or anything dramatic like that, which made the mandatory family meeting even more suspicious. I flew from Chicago to Nice, where the yacht was docked. Charlotte arrived from New York with her husband Marcus, who wore boat shoes that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Preston showed up solo, straight from some blockchain conference in Switzerland, looking exhausted. Gemma flew in from LA with her girlfriend Sarah, both of them tanned and relaxed. The crew welcomed us aboard with champagne and canapes. The yacht looked immaculate, as always, polished wood and gleaming chrome everywhere. Mom and Dad were already aboard, dressed casually but expensively, both of them wearing matching smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. That first evening, we had dinner on the deck while cruising along the coast toward Monaco. The sunset was gorgeous, painting the Mediterranean in oranges and pinks. The food was incredible as always, prepared by Chef Antoine, who'd been with the yacht since Dad bought it. Everything should have been perfect, but there was tension in the air you could cut with a knife. Charlotte kept checking her phone despite Dad's no-work rule on the yacht. Preston was drinking more than usual, already on his 3rd scotch before the main course arrived. Gemma was quiet, which was unlike her usual bubbly personality. And Mom kept glancing at Dad with this look I couldn't quite read, something between concern and resignation. After dessert, Dad cleared his throat and stood up. Here we go, I thought. Thank you all for coming, he started, his voice taking on that formal tone he used for business presentations. Your mother and I wanted to have this vacation together because we need to discuss some important family matters. Specifically, our estate planning. Charlotte sat up straighter. Preston's eyes sharpened despite the alcohol. Gemma reached for Sarah's hand under the table. We're not dying, Mom interjected quickly with a small laugh. Please don't look so worried. We're both healthy and plan to be around for many more years. But we're also not getting any younger, and it's time to be more organized about our affairs. Dad continued, we've been working with our attorneys to update our estate documents. The businesses, the properties, the investments, they're all being structured in specific ways that we'll discuss over this trip. But tonight, we want to talk about the Serenity. Everyone's attention locked on Dad. This yacht represented more than just an asset. It represented family vacations, milestone celebrations, marriage proposals. Preston had proposed to his ex-fiancée on this deck, and countless memories spanning 15 years. The yacht is worth approximately $4.2 million in current market value, Dad said, and I could see Marcus's eyes light up at the number. It costs roughly $400,000 per year to maintain, crew, dock, and operate. It's a significant asset and a significant expense. We've decided, Mom said gently, that when the time comes, the yacht will go to one of you. Not to be sold and divided, but kept in the family by one person who will maintain it and continue the tradition. The silence that followed was deafening. The only sound was the waves lapping against the hull and the distant cry of seagulls. Charlotte spoke first. Which one of us? Her voice was carefully neutral, but I could hear the edge underneath. We haven't decided yet, Dad replied. That's part of what this trip is about. We want to see which of you truly values the Serenity for what it represents, not just its monetary value. Preston laughed, a harsh sound. So this is some kind of test? We're competing for the yacht. Not competing, Mom said quickly. We're just observing. Spending time together as a family and seeing who has the deepest connection to what the Serenity means. This is insane, Gemma said quietly. You're turning a family vacation into a reality show competition. It's practical estate planning, Charlotte countered, her investment banker brain already calculating. One person gets the yacht, the rest of us presumably get equivalent assets elsewhere. The question is who has the strongest claim. And just like that, the vacation went from tense to toxic. That night, I couldn't sleep. The gentle rocking of a yacht usually lulled me right out, but my mind was racing. I kept thinking about all the memories tied to the Serenity. Learning to sail with Dad when I was 12. Charlotte's 30th birthday party with 50 guests and a live band. The summer Preston and I spent diving off the coast of Greece. Gemma's college graduation celebration. But I also thought about the practical reality. I lived in Chicago and worked in corporate law. When would I even use the yacht? Charlotte lived in Manhattan, equally landlocked. Preston traveled constantly for his crypto ventures. Gemma was in LA, closest to the coast, but also the least interested in boating. None of this made sense unless you understood my father. He'd grown up poor, really poor, in a small town in Ohio. Every luxury he had, he'd earned through brutal work and calculated risks. He'd built his empire from nothing, and he valued that struggle. This test wasn't about the yacht at all. It was about seeing which of his children had inherited his drive and appreciation for what wealth represented. The next morning, we docked in Monaco for a day of shore activities. Mom had arranged a private tour of the Prince's Palace and reservations at a Michelin-starred restaurant. It should have been wonderful. Instead, Charlotte cornered me before breakfast. We need to talk strategy. Strategy for what? For this whole situation. Look, Preston can't handle the yacht. He's never in one place long enough. Gemma doesn't even like boating that much. It's between you and me, and I think we can both agree I have the stronger case. Charlotte, this isn't a corporate merger. It's our family's yacht. Worth $4.2 million, she said flatly. Plus the emotional value. I'm the oldest. I've been on this yacht longer than anyone. I brought my first boyfriend here to meet the family. Marcus proposed to me on the deck. I have the strongest historical claim. Mom and Dad said it's not about competition. She looked at me like I was incredibly naive. Everything's a competition, Ryan. You know that. And if Preston or Gemma get the yacht, they'll just sell it within 5 years. At least with us, it stays in the family properly. I walked away before I said something I'd regret. But she had a point that bothered me. Would Preston keep the yacht or sell it when he needed cash for the next big crypto investment? Would Gemma maintain the $400,000 annual cost on a curator's salary? The Monaco tour was awkward. Mom tried to keep everyone engaged with historical facts and cheerful commentary, but the rest of us were all in our heads. During lunch at the restaurant, Preston ordered a $3,000 bottle of wine and made pointed comments about celebrating while we could still afford it. Gemma barely spoke, just pushed her food around her plate. Charlotte took business calls between courses despite Dad's glaring disapproval. That evening, things exploded. We were having cocktails on the deck before dinner when Preston brought up the elephant in the room. So, when are we going to have the real conversation? About why Charlotte thinks she deserves the yacht more than the rest of us. Charlotte's face went cold. I never said that. You didn't have to. You've been campaigning since we left Nice. Working angles, building your case. It's exhausting. Someone has to think practically about this. You certainly won't. You'll just want to trade the yacht for Bitcoin or whatever scheme you're currently obsessed with. Preston's jaw tightened. My schemes, as you call them, have made me more money in 5 years than your firm has made you in 15. Boys, Mom said weakly, but Dad held up his hand. Let them talk. This is what we need to hear. Charlotte stood up, her wine glass shaking slightly in her hand. Fine. You want honesty? Preston has no business owning this yacht. He's irresponsible with money. He's never in one place for more than a month, and he'd sell it the first time he needed liquid assets. Gemma is barely established in her career and can't afford the maintenance costs. Ryan is too passive to fight for anything he actually wants. I'm the only one with the stability, the resources, and the genuine appreciation for what Serenity represents. The silence was crushing. Gemma spoke up, her voice shaking. You don't get to decide what I can or can't appreciate. I learned to swim off this yacht. I had my first kiss on that sun deck. Just because I don't make as much money as you doesn't mean I love it less. But can you afford it? Charlotte pressed. That's the real question. Can you maintain a crew, pay the docking fees, handle the insurance and repairs? Or would you run it into the ground trying? Maybe I'd find partners. Maybe Sarah and I would use it differently than you would. Maybe money isn't the only consideration. Charlotte laughed. Money is always a consideration. That's what Dad taught us. Dad finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. That's not what I taught you. I taught you that money is a tool, not a goal. The Serenity isn't about the $4.2 million. It's about what we built here as a family. Then why not keep in the family collectively? I heard myself say, why does one person have to own it? Why not set up a trust where we all share it? Because that never works, Preston said, surprisingly insightful for how much he'd been drinking. Shared ownership means nobody takes responsibility. Somebody has to be the primary owner, and everyone else has to accept that. Marcus, who'd been silent until now, made a mistake. If I may offer some perspective as someone who married into this family, the logical choice is Charlotte. She has the financial sophistication to manage the asset properly, and frankly, she's the most like your father in terms of business acumen. Preston turned on him. Nobody asked you, Marcus. You're not even really family. You're just Charlotte's +1 who happens to have a marriage certificate. Preston. Mom stood up, her face flushed with anger. That is completely inappropriate. But the damage was done. Marcus's face went red. Charlotte looked ready to throw her wine glass. Gemma was crying quietly, while Sarah tried to comfort her. And Dad just sat there watching all of us with an expression I couldn't read. The dinner that followed was silent and miserable. Chef Antoine's beautiful meal went mostly uneaten. We all retreated to our staterooms early, and I could hear muffled arguing through the walls from multiple rooms. I found Dad on the deck around midnight. He was sitting alone, drinking brandy, and staring at the lights of Monaco in the distance. Can I join you? I asked. He nodded toward the empty chair. We sat in silence for a while. This isn't going how you planned, is it? I finally said. He gave a bitter laugh. Actually, it's going exactly how I feared it would. I just hoped I was wrong. Why did you do it this way? Why not just decide and tell us? Because I wanted to see who you all really were when something valuable was at stake. Your mother and I have been lucky. We built wealth, and we've been able to give you all comfortable lives. But we've worried that maybe we gave you too much, that you don't understand what things actually cost. We understand money, Dad. Do you? Or do you just understand spending it? He took a sip of his brandy. When I bought this yacht 15 years ago, it wasn't about having a luxury toy. It was about creating a place where we could be together, away from everything else. A floating home base for the family. I wanted you kids to have that connection, that foundation. And now you're using it to tear us apart. He winced. I'm using it to show you who you are. Charlotte sees it as an asset to be managed. Preston sees it as something that could be liquidated. Gemma sees it as memories. And you, Ryan, you see it as something that should belong to everyone but will probably belong to someone else. What do you see it as? A test I'm failing. He set down his glass. I thought one of you would step up and show you understood what the serenity really represents. Not the money, not the status, but the family connection. Instead, you're all fighting over the prize without understanding why the prize matters. Maybe because you made it a competition. I made a choice. You all made it a competition. I didn't have a response to that. Over the next few days, the vacation continued in a state of Cold War. We visited Greek islands, had expensive meals, took tours of historical sites. On the surface, everything looked perfect. Instagram posts showed a wealthy, happy family enjoying Mediterranean luxury. The reality was that we were barely speaking to each other. Charlotte started documenting everything with photos and notes, building some kind of case file for why she deserved the yacht. Preston drank more and made passive-aggressive comments. Gemma withdrew completely, spending most of her time in her stateroom with Sarah. And I just observed it all with growing sadness. Then things got worse. Charlotte hired a maritime attorney. We were docked in Santorini when a man in a business suit came aboard. Charlotte introduced him as Gerard Russo, a specialist in luxury asset transfers and maritime law. She'd arranged a video call with our parents' estate attorney without telling anyone. Dad's face when he saw Russo was something I'll never forget. Pure betrayal mixed with disappointment. What is this, Charlotte? Mom asked, her voice tight. It's due diligence, Charlotte replied calmly. I've been doing research on optimal yacht ownership structures. There are significant tax implications to how the Serenity is transferred. I wanted to ensure we're all informed about the financial reality. You mean you wanted to position yourself as the most knowledgeable candidate, Preston said. Russo spent an hour presenting various scenarios. Trust structures, LLC formations, tax strategies for different countries. It was all technically useful information, but the subtext was clear. Charlotte was demonstrating she was the only one sophisticated enough to handle the yacht properly. Gemma left halfway through the presentation. I followed her. I found her on the bow of the yacht, looking out at the Aegean Sea. This is exactly what I hate about our family, she said when I joined her. Everything becomes a transaction. Everything has to be optimized and structured and turned into a business deal. Can't anything just be what it is? What do you want the yacht to be? I don't know. Maybe I don't want it all anymore. Not if it means turning into Charlotte, calculating every angle and treating family like a corporate acquisition. Is that what you think I'm doing? She looked at me. Aren't you? Everyone is. Even you, Ryan, you're just quieter about it. But you're watching and calculating, trying to figure out your angle. I don't have an angle. That's the problem. In this family, Not having an angle means you lose by default. That night, Preston got drunk and confronted Mom. I wasn't there for the initial conversation, but I heard the yelling from my stateroom. By the time I got to the main salon, Preston was red-faced and loud, with Mom in tears. "You're manipulating us," Preston shouted. "This whole thing is manipulation. You and Dad dangling the yacht like a carrot, watching us fight over it, judging us. It's sick. We're trying to make the best decision for the family," Mom said, her voice breaking. "You're trying to control us even after you're dead. That's what this is really about. Making sure we dance to your tune forever." Dad stepped between them. "That's enough, Preston." "Is it? Because I'm just getting started. You want to know what I think? I think you hate that we're all successful without you. That we found our own paths instead of following yours. So now you're using the yacht as one last test to prove we need your approval." "Preston, you're drunk," Charlotte said from a doorway. "I'm honest. There's a difference." He turned back to Dad. "You know what? Keep your yacht. Keep all of it. I don't need your validation or your inheritance. I've made my own way." "With the trust fund Dad set up for you," Charlotte said coldly. "Let's not pretend you're self-made. I turned $1 million into $50 million. What did you do? Married rich and managed other people's money." Marcus stepped forward, but I grabbed his arm. This needed to play out. "Stop," Gemma said quietly. But nobody heard her over the arguing. "Stop," she yelled at this time, loud enough to cut through everything. "Just stop. All of you." Everyone turned to look at her. Gemma rarely raised her voice. When she did, people listened. "This is disgusting. We're disgusting. Mom and Dad brought us here to spend time together as a family, and we've turned it into this nightmare. Fighting over money, attacking each other, hiring lawyers." She looked at Charlotte, treating each other like competition instead of siblings. "Gemma, you don't understand the complexity," Charlotte started. "I understand that we had a family once. Before we knew about the yacht decision. Before we started calculating our shares. We actually liked each other. Or at least pretended to." Tears were streaming down her face. "And now, I'm watching us destroy that over a boat." "It's not just a boat," Preston said. "It's worth millions. So what? We're all comfortable. We all have more than we need. Why does it matter so much who gets the Serenity?" Nobody had a good answer for that. Gemma wiped her eyes. "I'm withdrawing from consideration. I don't want the yacht. Not like this. Not if it means becoming the kind of person who would fight my family over an inheritance." She walked out and Sarah followed her. The rest of us stood there in uncomfortable silence. Mom spoke first, her voice soft. "Maybe this was a mistake. I thought bringing you all together would help you remember what matters. Instead, we've just highlighted how far apart you've grown." "It's not too late," I said. "We can fix this." "Can we?" Charlotte asked. "Because Preston's right about some things. We all have our own lives now. Different values, different priorities. Maybe the yacht can't belong to all of us anymore because we're not really all of us anymore." Dad hadn't said anything since Preston's outburst. He just stood there looking older than I'd ever seen him, the weight of disappointment heavy on his shoulders. The next few days were subdued. We continued the itinerary because turning back would have been admitting complete failure. But the joy was gone. We went through the motions of a luxury vacation while avoiding real conversation. I spent a lot of time thinking about what Gemma had said. About who we'd become. About whether the money and success had cost us something essential. We were docked in Mykonos when I found Charlotte sitting alone, working on her laptop despite the beautiful beach just steps away. "Can we talk?" I asked. She looked up wary. "About what?" "About why you want the yacht so badly." She closed the laptop slowly. "That's a ridiculous question. It's a $4 million asset. Charlotte, you make that in a good year. You could buy your own yacht if you wanted. So why this one?" She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was different. Softer, less certain. "Because Dad loves it. And if I have the yacht, it means I'm the one he trusts most. The one he believes in." She laughed bitterly. "Pathetic, right? I'm 38 years old, running a successful business, and I'm still trying to win my father's approval." "We all are," I admitted. "That's why he did this. He wanted to see which of us wanted it for the right reasons." "And what are the right reasons?" "I don't know, but I don't think it's winning his approval or managing a valuable asset. I think he wanted to see which of us still understood what the yacht represented when he bought it. When it was about family, not money." Charlotte looked out at the water. "I don't remember that version. I was already in college when Dad bought the Serenity. It was always a status symbol to me. Proof that we'd made it. Maybe that's the problem. To Dad, it was proof of what he'd built. To us, it's just something we're entitled to inherit." That evening, I asked Dad if we could talk privately. We took one of the small boats and motored out away from a yacht, just the two of us on the open water. "I think I understand now," I told him. "What you were trying to do with this trip. Enlighten me, because I'm not sure I understand it anymore. You wanted to see if any of us loved the yacht the way you do. For what it represents, not what it's worth. You wanted to know if you'd raise children who understood the difference. And I don't think any of us do. Not really. We grew up with wealth. We never had to struggle for it the way you did. So to us, the yacht is just another expensive thing. We can intellectually understand it means something more, but we don't feel it the way you do. Dad was quiet, steering the small boat in slow circles. I failed you then. I wanted to give you everything I didn't have, but in doing that, I took away the very thing that made it meaningful. You didn't fail us. You loved us. But yet, maybe we're spoiled. Maybe we can't appreciate what we have because we never lacked anything. So what do I do with the serenity? Honestly, don't give it to any of us. Keep it as long as you can. When you can't anymore, sell it and donate the money. Or turn it into something that serves a purpose beyond family legacy. You don't want it. I do, but for the wrong reasons. I want it because it represents childhood memories and family time. But I live in Chicago. I'd use it twice a year, and the rest of the time it would just sit there costing money and making me feel guilty. That's not what you wanted when you bought it. Dad looked at me with something like relief. You're the first one to say that. Because everyone else is still trying to win the competition. I'm just tired of competing. We sat in silence for a while, bobbing gently on the water. In the distance, the Serenity looked beautiful, gleaming white against the blue sea. From here, you couldn't see the tension and conflict inside. You just saw a luxury yacht on a perfect day. When we got back, I found everyone gathered in the main salon. The atmosphere was different, less hostile. Gemma and Sarah were talking with Preston, actually talking, not arguing. Charlotte and Marcus were with Mom, and everyone looked up when Dad and I entered. Family meeting, Dad announced. Real one this time. We all sat down. Dad stood at the head of the table, Mom beside him. Your mother and I have made a decision about the Serenity, Dad said. We're keeping it. Charlotte started to protest, but Dad held up his hand. Let me finish. We're keeping ownership of the yacht for as long as we're able to use it. When we can't anymore, we'll sell it. The proceeds will be divided equally among the four of you, along with everything else in our estate. No special legacy. No test. No competition. Dad, Preston started. I was wrong, Dad continued. I thought this trip would show me which of you deserved to inherit something meaningful. Instead, it showed me that the meaning I attach to the Serenity isn't something I can transfer through a will. It's personal to me, to the journey I took to be able to afford it. You all have your own journeys, your own things that will mean to you what this yacht means to me. Mom spoke up. We wanted you to value family and connection over money. But we can't force that by giving you something valuable and watching you fight over it. That's not how values work. Charlotte had tears in her eyes. I'm sorry. I turned this into something ugly. I got so focused on winning that I forgot why anything mattered in the first place. Preston nodded. I was an ass. To Marcus especially. I'm sorry, man. You are family. Marcus accepted with a nod, clearly relieved the hostility was over. Gemma spoke quietly. So we just go back to how things were before? No, I said, because we can't pretend this didn't happen. We saw who we become when something valuable is at stake. We need to decide if that's who we want to be. So what do we do? Charlotte asked. Dad sat down, suddenly looking less formal, more like just a father. You figure out who you are beyond the money. You build something meaningful on your own. You stop looking to me and your mother for validation and start validating yourselves. That's what you wanted from this whole thing. Preston asked, for us to not need you. I wanted you to not need my money. There's a difference. I'll always be your father. But I don't want you to be people who define yourselves by what you'll inherit someday. I want you to be people I'd be proud of even if I'd never made a dollar. The rest of the vacation was different. We were still tense sometimes, still working through the damage we'd done to each other. But there was honesty now. Real conversation instead of positioning and politics. Charlotte admitted she'd been miserable at her firm for years, doing work she didn't care about because it was prestigious and lucrative. Preston talked about feeling like an outsider in the family because his wealth came from tech instead of traditional business. Gemma shared that she'd always felt like the least important because she made the least money, like her career in the arts was somehow less valuable. And I admitted that I'd spent my whole life avoiding conflict and trying to make everyone happy, which meant I'd never really stood for anything. We didn't solve everything. Families don't work like that. But we started being more real with each other. The last night on the yacht, we had dinner on the deck under the stars. Chef Antoine outdid himself with a farewell meal. We toasted to family, to honesty, to learning hard lessons on expensive boats. I want to say something, Charlotte said toward the end of the evening. I've been thinking about what Dad said about building something meaningful. I'm leaving my firm. I'm going to start a fund that invests in women-owned businesses. Smaller, more personal, actually making a difference. Preston spoke up. I'm setting up a foundation for financial literacy education, teaching people from backgrounds like where Dad came from how to build wealth. Because he's right, we don't know what it's like to start from nothing. Gemma smiled. Sarah and I are opening a community art space in LA, making art accessible to kids who can't afford programs. Less curation, more creation. They all looked at me. I'm writing a book, I said, about families and money and the complicated relationship between the two, using what I learned this week. Mom was crying happy tears. Dad looked proud in a way I'd rarely seen. The yacht isn't the legacy, Dad said. You are. What you choose to do, who you choose to be. That's what lasts. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my apartment in Chicago, working on the book manuscript. The family group chat is active again, but different than before. We share real things now, not just polite updates. Charlotte sends articles about her new fund. Preston shares success stories from his education programs. Gemma posts pictures from the art space opening. Mom and Dad took the Serenity to Croatia last month. Just the two of them and the crew. They sent photos that looked like they were having the time of their lives, rediscovering why they bought the yacht in the first place. Charlotte called me last week. I don't know if I ever actually wanted the yacht, she admitted. I think I just wanted to win something. To prove I was the favorite. Were you disappointed when Dad changed the plan? Relieved, honestly. Owning the Serenity would have been one more thing to manage, one more asset to optimize. I don't want my life to be about managing assets anymore. What do you want it to be about? Building something that matters. Helping people who actually need help. Weird concept for someone from our background, right? We talked for an hour about her new fund, my book, Family Dynamics. Like siblings, not competitors. Preston texted me yesterday. Dad offered to be an advisor for the foundation. Not funding it, just advising. First time we've worked together on something where I'm leading. Feels good. Gemma's art space is thriving. She says teaching kids creativity is more fulfilling than curating expensive pieces for wealthy collectors. Sarah proposed to her there last month, in front of a mural the kids had painted. The family's invited to the wedding next spring. And me? I'm writing this all down, trying to understand what happened on that Mediterranean cruise. How a luxury vacation became a mirror that showed us who we'd become. How a $4 million yacht became the catalyst for us to actually figure out what mattered beyond the price tag. The manuscript is titled The Serenity Paradox, What Luxury Inheritance Taught Me About Value. My agent thinks it might actually sell, that other wealthy families deal with the same dynamics. But more than the book, I'm different now. I'm dating someone my parents haven't vetted, someone who works in nonprofit education and has student loans. She didn't know anything about my family's wealth when we started dating, and when she found out, she mostly just worried that we came from different worlds. We're figuring it out together, building something that's ours, not inherited. I talk to Dad every week now. Real conversations about life, not just polite check-ins. He tells me stories from his childhood, about being hungry sometimes, about watching his own father struggle with alcoholism and poverty. About how the yacht represented escaping all of that, having security his father never had. I understand now why he tested us. He wanted to know if his children had been ruined by the very success he'd worked so hard to achieve. If we'd become entitled, shallow people who valued money over relationships. The answer was more complicated than a simple yes or no. We'd been shaped by privilege, absolutely. We'd internalized some ugly things about worth and value. But we weren't beyond learning. We weren't beyond change. Mom called me last week to say they're planning another family trip next summer. Somewhere landlocked, she joked. Maybe we'll rent a cabin in Colorado. No valuable assets to fight over, just hiking and card games. Everyone's already said yes. Not because we're obligated, but because we actually want to spend time together now. The Mediterranean cruise that almost destroyed us ended up saving us from becoming people we didn't want to be. I think about that group text from Dad a lot. The photo of the yacht, the mandatory family meeting, the sense of dread. I felt knowing something was coming. At the time, I thought it was going to be bad news. Cancer diagnosis, divorce announcement, bankruptcy. Something that would change everything. I was right, just not in the way I expected. The trip did change everything. Not because someone won or lost the yacht, but because we saw ourselves clearly for the first time. We saw how money had shaped us, how inheritance had poisoned our relationships before anyone had even died. We saw the future we were heading toward if nothing changed. Bitter, isolated, wealthy people who'd traded family connection for asset protection. And seeing that possible future led us choose a different one. Last month, all 4 of us siblings met for lunch in New York. No parents, no spouses, just us. We talked about everything, the good and the ugly. Charlotte admitted she'd researched maritime law for months before that trip, preparing to make her case. Preston confessed he'd planned to offer Dad a cash payment for the yacht, essentially buying out his siblings before the inheritance even happened. Gemma revealed she'd been in therapy for years dealing with feeling inadequate compared to the rest of us. I told them about writing this book, about sharing the family story publicly. I was nervous about their reaction, worried they'd feel exposed or betrayed. Charlotte laughed. Good. Someone should tell the truth about what wealth does to families. Maybe it'll help someone else avoid what we went through. Preston agreed. Tell the whole ugly story. Include the part where I called Marcus not really family. I'm still ashamed of that. Gemma smiled. Make sure you include that we fixed it. That's the important part. Not that we fought, but that we found our way back. So here I am, finishing the manuscript. It's longer than I planned, more detailed, more honest. But that's what the story needs. The truth about how a luxury Mediterranean cruise became a battleground, and how that battle forced us to become better people. The book's dedication is already written, to Mom and Dad, who gave us everything, then taught us to value what matters. And to the Serenity, which showed us who we were, and who we could become. Dad doesn't know about the book yet. I'm planning to tell him when the manuscript is finished. I think he'll understand. He's the one who taught me that the best lessons are usually the most uncomfortable ones. Mom will worry about privacy, about what people will think. But she'll also understand that some stories need to be told. That other families are navigating the same complicated dynamics around wealth and inheritance, and maybe our experience can help them communicate better before they end up screaming at each other in a Monaco harbor. The funny thing is, the Serenity sits in its dock in Nice most of the year now. Dad and Mom use it a few times annually, but the glory days of frequent family trips are over. We're all too busy with our own lives, our own projects. The yacht that almost tore us apart now just exists quietly, depreciating slowly, costing its $400,000 per year to maintain. In a way, that makes Dad's original decision even more poignant. He didn't want to burden one of us with an asset that would own us rather than the other way around. He wanted us free to build our own lives, make our own meanings, find our own serenities in whatever form made sense for us. Charlotte's Serenity is her investment fund, helping women entrepreneurs who remind her of young Dad. Preston's is his education foundation, breaking cycles of financial illiteracy. Gemma's is her art space, creating beauty and opportunity in underserved communities. And mine, apparently, is this book, trying to make sense of it all. I called Dad this morning to tell him about the manuscript. There was a long pause after I explained what I'd written. You told the whole story, he asked. The fighting, the lawyer Charlotte hired, Preston's drinking, all of it. All of it, including how it forced us to change. Another pause. Good. Stories without the hard parts aren't really stories. They're just propaganda. You're not mad. Mad? I'm proud. You took something painful and turned it into something useful. That's alchemy, Ryan. That's what I always hope you kids would learn to do. We talked for another hour. He told me more stories about buying the Serenity, about the first time he took it out with just Mom, about watching his children grow up on that deck, about how he'd worried the yacht would become a burden to us, a golden albatross around someone's neck. The test was never about who deserved the yacht, he admitted. It was about seeing if anyone understood that deserving it meant being willing to let it go. That's pretty zen for a real estate mogul. He laughed. Your mother's been making me read philosophy. It's her new thing, but she's right about a lot of it. Attachment causes suffering and all that. I was attached to the idea of the yacht being this perfect family legacy. Letting go of that attachment freed all of us. After we hung up, I sat with that conversation for a long time. Dad was right. The Serenity paradox wasn't about the yacht at all. It was about learning that the things we think matter often don't, and the things we overlook often do. Family mattered. Honesty mattered. Growth mattered. Being people we could respect mattered. The $4.2 million yacht? That was just a stage where we learned those lessons. Next month, the whole family is meeting in Colorado for that landlocked vacation Mom planned. We're renting a large cabin near Aspen, nothing too fancy. There will be hiking and cooking and probably some arguments because that's what families do. But there won't be anyone calculating asset values or positioning for inheritance. We're past that now. Charlotte's bringing her new girlfriend. She and Marcus divorced 6 months ago, amicably, both admitting they'd married for the wrong reasons. She seems happier now, lighter. Preston's bringing someone too, a teacher he met through his foundation. Dad's already joking about how both his oldest kids are dating educators now, like it's contagious. Gemma and Sarah are planning their wedding for next spring aboard the Serenity. Dad offered immediately when they got engaged, and this time it felt right. Not ownership, just use. The yacht's serving its original purpose, bringing family together for important moments. I'm bringing my girlfriend Claire. She's nervous about meeting everyone, worried about not fitting in with a wealthy family. I keep telling her we're all just regular dysfunctional people who happen to have money. She'll see. The Colorado trip won't be perfect. We'll probably have moments of tension, old patterns emerging. But we have tools now. We can call out the bullshit. We can say when something bothers us instead of letting it fester. We can be honest about who we are and what we need. That's the real inheritance Dad gave us. Not the money, not the yacht, not the properties and investments. He gave us a crisis that forced us to either grow or fracture permanently. And we chose growth. The manuscript ends with a question I ask readers to consider. What are you holding on to that you need to let go? What attachments are preventing you from connecting with the people who matter? For us, it was the attachment to winning, to being the favorite, to proving our worth through what we owned rather than who we were. Letting go of those attachments was painful but necessary. I don't know if this book will help anyone. Maybe wealthy families will read it and recognize themselves. Maybe people without wealth will read it and feel less envious of luxury they imagine is purely joyful. Maybe it'll just be a story that resonates with anyone who's ever had complicated family dynamics. But I know it helped me to write it, to process what happened, to understand the lessons, to forgive myself and my siblings for the ugly parts. The manuscript is due to my publisher next week. After that, there will be edits and marketing, and eventually publication. The family story will become public, with all its messy reality exposed. Mom's already planning the book launch party. She wants to have it on the Serenity, which seems fitting. The yacht that almost tore us apart will be the venue where we celebrate putting the pieces back together. Dad suggested we donate a portion of the book proceeds to financial literacy organizations. Since you're making money off our dysfunction, might as well do some good with it, he joked. But he was serious about the charity part. Charlotte wants to write a foreword from her perspective. Preston wants to write an afterword. Gemma wants to contribute some artwork for the cover. My story became our story, and they want to be part of telling it. That's how I know we made it through. Not because we don't argue anymore, or because everything's perfect now, but because we can collaborate on sharing our failure without ego, without needing to control the narrative. We can let the story be complicated and messy because we're no longer afraid of being complicated and messy people. The Serenity still sits in that nice harbor, gleaming white, looking from the outside like a symbol of achieved dreams and perfect family life. People walk past it on the dock and probably imagine how wonderful it must be to own something like that, to have that kind of wealth and freedom. They don't see the fights that happened on that deck. The tears, the accusations, the near-permanent fracturing of family bonds. They don't know that the yacht was almost the worst thing that ever happened to us. But they also don't see what came after. The healing, the honest conversations, the decision to choose connection over competition. They don't know that the yacht became a catalyst for the best changes we've ever made. Both things are true. The yacht was terrible for us, and the yacht saved us. The inheritance issue almost destroyed our family, and the inheritance issue forced us to build something stronger than we had before. Life's like that. Complicated. Paradoxical. Impossible to reduce to simple narratives about good and bad, right and wrong, deserving and undeserving. My book tries to capture that complexity. Whether I succeeded, I won't know until readers tell me. But I tried. I told the truth as I experienced it, and I invited my siblings to add their truths too. That's all any of us can do. Tell our truth, listen to other people's truths, and try to find meaning in the messy, overlapping space between different perspectives. The dedication to Mom and Dad remains. But I'm adding a second dedication to everyone who's ever wondered if they can survive their family's dysfunction. You can. It's hard, it hurts, and it requires letting go of stories you've believed your whole life. But you can. We did. That's the message I hope comes through. Not that we're special or that we have all the answers, but that we survived a crisis of our own making and came out better. That growth is possible even when it seems impossible. That families can heal if everyone's willing to be uncomfortable for a while. The Mediterranean cruise happened 3 years ago now. Enough time has passed that I can look at photos from the trip without cringing. There we all are, dressed in expensive resort wear, holding champagne glasses, smiling for the camera. Looking at those photos, you'd never guess the drama happening just outside the frame. But that's every family photo, isn't it? The cultivated image versus the complicated reality. I'm done hiding the complicated reality. Done pretending everything's fine when it's not. Done protecting the family image at the cost of honesty. The book is my way of saying, here's what really happens in wealthy families. Here's how money complicates love. Here's how inheritance poisons relationships before anyone's even dead. And here's how we survived all and came out grateful for struggle. Because I am grateful now. Grateful Dad forced the issue. Grateful we fought out instead of staying polite and distant forever. Grateful we had enough resources to get therapy, to take time to heal, to work on ourselves while supporting each other. That's the privilege we actually had. Not the yacht or the money. The privilege to fail dramatically and still have the resources to recover. Not everyone has that luxury. So I'm telling our story, but I'm trying to make it useful beyond just wealthy family dynamics. The core lessons apply more broadly. Attachment causes suffering. Honest communication prevents resentment. Values matter more than valuables. And sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the best thing in disguise. The manuscript sits on my desk, 342 pages. 3 years of experience condensed into one book. The story of the Serenity and what she taught us about family, wealth, and letting go. Tomorrow, I'll send it to my publisher. Then the story stops being just ours and becomes part of a larger conversation about inheritance, wealth, and family dynamics. I'm nervous about that. Nervous about judgment, about people thinking we're spoiled or ungrateful. But I'm also excited. Excited to contribute something honest to a conversation that's usually full of polite lies. Dad's right. Stories without the hard parts aren't really stories. They're just propaganda. Pretty lies we tell ourselves to avoid uncomfortable truths. I'm done with pretty lies. This is the real story. The whole ugly, beautiful, complicated truth about what happened when my parents' luxury vacation turned into a fight over who gets the family yacht. And the even more complicated truth about what we became after. Thanks for sticking with me through all this. It's definitely been a journey worth sharing. Until we meet again, folks, if you made it to the end, drop a comment. I love reading all your comments.